You're listening to the Confidence Coach Podcast, episode 91, From Food Stamps to Financial Freedom, an interview with Jordan English. All right, ladies, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have Jordan English on with me, and I am super stoked to have her here. I've been really looking forward to this interview and hearing more about her story. We're going to dive kind of deep, hear about all the things that she's overcome. But Jordan is a mom, she's a wife, she's a co-owner of a real estate team, and a lifestyle entrepreneur. So I'll let Jordan take the floor. Tell us who you are, what you do, where you're from. Let's hear it.
All right, so again, my name is Jordan. I live in Pensacola, Florida, so that is the part of Florida that's basically lower Alabama. I grew up in Alabama in a very small town, just an hour north of here. But recently, like to fast forward a good chunk, I am a wife to a wonderful man. We have 2 babies. We have a real estate team together, and about 8 months ago, I started on this journey of clarity where I was really finding my purpose, and our real estate business really gave me that option to pursue something else that was on my heart. And I knew that God put me through a lot of the things that he put me through for a reason. And I started to have that freedom to actually act on it and to help other women. So that turned into a podcast, which then turned into a course, which then turned into a mastermind. So I am, while also, I'm a mom, so I have 2 babies that I take care of every single day, and I'm also growing 2 companies at the same time, which I'm super passionate about both of them. So that's where I'm at right now.
So tell us more about those companies.
So 3 years ago, I met my husband, and I was a single mom with a 2-year-old little girl, and I was on the path to get an accounting degree, which I did get. I'm very proud of that because that was very hard. But I was on the path to be an accountant, and we got pregnant 8 months after we met each other. So in the end of my degree, in the end of school, I was in internships, but at that point, about the time when it would start to get to the point of someone hiring me, I was already 30 weeks pregnant, so no one was going to hire me. And Bo was like, just come work for me, just come help me. And I'm very stubborn, and I was beat in the head with the statement of never depend on a man since I was 7. So I was gung-ho against it. And then finally, I just didn't have a choice. So we weren't married. We weren't engaged. We weren't anything. So I was basically shacking up with my boyfriend with 2 kids. And then, so and I love real estate. I always have, but I was always trained that real estate was a hobby and that was not something sustainable or stable to get into. So I jumped full steam ahead, and we quickly, the first year we doubled his income from the year before. The next year we doubled again. And now we're on the path to double again. And we went from just Bo to now 5 people on our team. So we have an admin and 3 agents. And then me. I'm an agent too, but I have really I've taken a step back into more of an operations role where I keep everyone on track. I do all the marketing, all the bookkeeping, taxes, etc., payroll, all that good stuff.
All the fun stuff, right?
Oh, yes. So the other business is the thing that I jump out of bed in the morning for, and that is this idea that my story has given me the tools to help other women live amazing lives. And I believe that all starts with being financially free. And the reason why I start out with that is because I feel like I was, that notion of never depend on anyone, always have the tools to take care of yourself. And I feel like if more women had those tools, they would be able to carve out time to, lose the weight, to meal prep, to spend more time with their kids, to pay off debt, all of these things. It all starts with becoming financially free. So that's a lot of action has brought clarity to that statement. It started out as a podcast. I was like, I don't know what this podcast is going to be about, but I have to have it. It was like put on my heart from God. And he was like, you need a podcast. You need to help women do something. And each episode, each step along the way brought me closer to where I am right now and the clarity that I have right now.
I love that. So you talk about the tools that women need to overcome these challenges in order to be financial free and carve out the time, space, and energy to go after their dreams and goals. So tell me, what tools are most essential for you, and like what tools do you teach women?
So very tangible tools are for the financial piece of it and for just life is mindset. And I know you talk about this a lot with your confidence coaching, and I feel like that's like the biggest piece. Like if you believe you can, you're right. If you don't believe you can, you're also right. So I really, really hone in on mindset and really opening up those limiting beliefs and figuring out like why they're there, how to overcome them, all of those things, while also teaching women how to actually apply a good mindset to a budget, because those go hand in hand. The way that you feel about money goes hand in hand with the debt that you have and how you're going to pay it off. The way that you feel about money is going to go into you breaking through those ceilings of what you can actually bring in for profit. For example, if you believe like, oh, if I could just make $50,000, I would be set, then that's what you're going to get to, and you're going to be comfortable with that. But what if you put that to 100 or 500 or 1 million? Whatever you believe, you can get there. You just have to figure it out.
That's awesome. No, and I totally agree with that. And I love how you talk about money and budgeting, because this is something that I talk about too, and how the emotional side of things really affects your budget. And so one of the tools that I tell people is, when you go back through your budget, see what purchases were life enhancing and felt good, and see what purchases were maybe quick fixes or things that didn't feel so good, that weren't an investment in your future. And this is, for me, it was gas station stops and ridiculous Amazon things. And it's like, holy smokes, before you know it, I'm spending over $1,000 a month on junk when I could be paying down my debt. Right. And so that was an awakening to me. And it was also a mindset shift, because while I only spent 20, 50, $100 a day, well, if you do that 10 or 15 times a month, it adds up. So while it seemed like small chunks, I was actually spending a fortune on literally on shit that did not serve me, So how did you, for real though, so how did you come to this awareness? Did you have something in your life where you're like, oh, I spent a lot of money, had a lot of debt, or why are you so passionate about this?
Okay, now we're going to get into it.
And now we're digging deep.
Yes. So 6 years ago, I met a man who swept me off my feet, who made me feel like the most beautiful person on the planet. I was 18 years old, and I had just come off of a very long-term relationship, throughout my whole entire middle school and high school. And that person was very toxic and made me feel very little. So this was in contrast, made me feel like I was on top of the world. So we get pregnant a month later. And I'm from South Alabama. So if you get pregnant, you plan a wedding. And, so planned a wedding for 5 months later. A week before the wedding, we had a miscarriage. And everyone was like, are y'all still getting married? I was like, oh yeah, I have my dress, the invitations are out. Of course, we're in love, we're getting married. So I get married, and 2 months later, I get pregnant again with my daughter, who is now 6. And so that, in that short amount of time, I figured out that I had made a grave mistake. And, I didn't have a job. So I went out and got a job, and which is very hard for an 18-year-old with no experience. because I was very active in school. Like, I was a majorette, I was in the band, like, I did all these extracurricular activities, I danced. I didn't have time to, like, work. So, and I knew that I was a hard worker, though, so I finally landed a good job for, someone who's now 19 years old. But then I'm pregnant. So they just hired me, and now I'm this pregnant girl that they just hired. So they do their best to, I wouldn't say get rid of me, but really, like, make sure that I was, like, up for the challenge. So I get through that period while, in that first 12 weeks of being, like, extremely sick at the same time. So then I finally, like, get put on the bank account and all that stuff. So, we're married, so we have a joint bank account because that's how I grew up, and that's what I thought was, how things worked. And, I mean, my parents have been married for 34 years, 35 this year. So, and I just saw what they did, and so that's what I did too. So anytime that I would get a paycheck, it would be gone immediately. I would get paid on Friday. It would be gone by Monday. I quickly realized that it was a big, big mistake. I get a credit card to build credit because I can't get anything because I have zero credit. So I get a credit card, and it's immediately maxed out by this wonderful person. And then, so that starts happening, but then I just put my head down and I just stick my head in the sand because I'm so sick, I'm pregnant, I'm working all the time. Like, I just don't have time to deal with it. And this person turns into a very toxic person. So then it turns into the point where we can't pay our bills. I don't even know what bills we have. I don't even know what's going on. I just know that, like, all of a sudden I want to go buy lunch and there's no money in the account. And, like, my card gets declined all the time. And, think I'm 19. I have no idea how this stuff works. So then another piece was this person was in the military. So I thought that I had health insurance. And I'm pregnant, so I'm going to the doctor all the time. And I go in to the doctor, and every time we go, they're like, hey, did you get your insurance? Did you send it to us? Like, what's going on? And I would turn to my husband and be like, you got that? Like, can you go fix that? Because I don't know how that works. And because he was 8 years older than me. And he's like, yeah, I got it. I'll fix it. And after, like, the fourth time that happened, I was super embarrassed. So I called myself. And they were like, oh, yeah, we have a wife on here, but it's not you. I was like, excuse me? What name is on there? Like, I didn't know that he had ever been married before. So push comes to shove, like, I call him. He's like, please meet me at the house. I go there. And he's like, you probably just, like, gave them the wrong social security number or something. And I was like, I am not that dumb, okay? And so by this point, like, I'm almost having a baby with this person. So everybody hates him. He's coming home drunk. He's an alcoholic. He is never home, messaging girls on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Meanwhile, I have no money to buy food for the baby that's in my belly. I just don't have any money to eat, like, literally. And people are calling me, trying to repossess our vehicle. Like, I have no idea what's going on. I didn't grow up like that. So I was like, what is this craziness? So then we have our precious, precious baby girl. And he's like, I am going to get out of the military. I'm going to go get a job, and we're going to be fine. I'm like, okay, whatever. So then it just, like, a few months after Avery was born, crap just hit the fan, like, in a big, big way. So I had no money. I was working my tail off 40, 50 hours a week with the newborn and trying to pay daycare, trying to pay bills, like, trying to keep everything afloat. And then, like, I would go to the grocery store and my card would get declined with, like, a conveyor belt full of food. And there's nothing more embarrassing than that. So eventually I find out that I am not only his second wife, I'm actually his third wife, and he's still married to the second one. So I was able to get our marriage annulled, and then that turned me into a single mom, which I pretty much was the whole time. But so then Avery was about 4 months old when that happened. So I'm a single mom. I finally get a hold of my bank account and my finances, but all of my expenses are way more than what a single income can afford. And then I'm staggering bills. I'm on Medicaid. I'm on welfare. I'm on food stamps. I'm paying for my baby's food with food stamps. And like from where I come from, that's like very shameful and embarrassing. And everyone was like, my manager was like, Jordan, you are the person that this is made for, the person that, you know, that's working their tail off and still can't get ends to meet. So don't feel shame. And I was like, I can't help but feel shame. I go to the Medicaid office to sign up or to get something fixed, and I feel like I'm super out of place. Like, how did I get here? Like, literally, it's like looking me in the face. Like, the decisions that I've made up until this point brought me to this, like, really, really low income situation. And that's just not who I am. So it's super embarrassing, super uncomfortable. You know, I have to go to the grocery store at like 6 o'clock in the morning so no one will see me using food stamps. And I eventually, my parents pestered me. They're like, move back home, move back home, move back home. I'm like, no, I'm fine. I can do everything by myself. I'm fine. So then I get to the point where I was like, Jordan, you're being stupid. Go live with your parents until you figure things out. So at this point, I'm 20. I moved back home with a 1-year-old. And then I start finally like being able to breathe because I'm still working in Pensacola, which was an hour. And I'm still bringing in the same amount of income, but my expenses are basically nothing except for daycare. So I finally am able to like dig myself out of the hole a little bit. And my mom, my mom said, Jordan, I figured out that in the position that I was in, I was never, ever going to be able to make enough money to live in Pensacola by myself with my baby. Just the cost of living and everything. There was no way. And I knew that there was no room for me to grow in the company that I was at. So I talked to my mom, and she's like, you know, if you can get a scholarship to school, which I think you can because you're a single mom and you are really smart, you can, you know, you had all good grades, straight A's through your whole entire school, go get a scholarship and we'll pay for everything else. Like, we'll take care of daycare, we'll take care of, because I would have to quit my job full time. So I finally bring myself around that, and I agree to it, and I get a scholarship, full ride, and at least for like 2 years, and I go and I get my accounting degree, y'all, and I knew when I was driving around that campus, I was like, one day I'm going to be able to say, like, I did this for my daughter, and I'm going to be able to give her everything that she wants. And I finally get that degree while having another baby on the way. And I just, like, I use those moments every single day, and I was like, I will never, ever live my life like that again, ever. And even past that, even after my husband and I were together and we were stable and he's amazing, he was a full-blown entrepreneur, real estate, like the quintessential like roller coaster of it all. And I had been working so hard for a stable income for years. Like, that was my goal. And to get to the point where we were on a roller coaster, I was like, buddy, this doesn't work for me. So I quickly get a hold of the finances. And I'm like, because weren't married at this point. I was like, look, I don't have a job. You are the income. You can't go get a commission check and put it all on a credit card, because then we still have to use the credit card to eat. Like, it doesn't work. So I figure out a way to stabilize that roller coaster, and then also make a plan to pay off the debt so we don't have to live like that anymore. So each level, I'm just like, no, this is not how you're supposed to live.
Oh my goodness. There is so much in that story. I don't even know where to start between multiple wives and like a miscarriage and the declining of cards and I'm not even sure which direction to go. The one thing that I do want to say is, wow, you've come a long freaking way.
Yeah.
But I do want to go back to, like, you talked about being ashamed and embarrassed. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I've been there too. I mean, at one point in time, I lived on credit card. That's just kind of how my brain worked. Like for me, I came from a family who lived paycheck to paycheck almost always. And so it was all, and nobody had any money for anything. And so when I turned 18 and, a credit card showed up in the mail, I thought it was like free money, and so next thing you know, I have thousands of dollars in credit card debt with no way to pay it. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't educated on that. And I was to the point where, yeah, I mean, I didn't have children, so I wasn't on, welfare or food stamps. But I mean, it was to the point where it was like, I'd go a couple days without eating because I could not afford food unless I went to eat with somebody or I went home and had a freaking hot dog. Like I lived on a package of hot dogs and bread. Like it was disgusting, but that's just where you're at, and I when you say shame and when you say embarrassed, like I feel that, but walk us through that for somebody who hasn't experienced it.
For sure. So I grew up in a home, and my parents are absolutely amazing. And whenever I was like in middle school, they filed bankruptcy because my dad was a business owner and it went under. And I never knew that they filed bankruptcy. I knew that things were tight, but I didn't know like to the extent that it was. So then my dad got a new job that was commission, and he started doing really well within a few years. So by the time I got into high school, we were pretty well off. We had a new house. My parents traveled for work all the time, so they would just give me the debit card and say, like, go to the grocery store, get what you need. I never had, like, an allowance or anything. Like, I wasn't crazy. Like, we weren't rich, but, like, it was comfortable. It was like, go get what you need. Don't spend a fortune, like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But I always had what I needed. So whenever I got to the point where I was on my own and I was starting a grocery shop on a budget, I was like, you people didn't teach me how to do this. Like, I can't, like, this adds up real quick. So my dad came down and took me to the grocery store and was like, here's how to grocery shop on a budget. I was like, okay, thank you, Dad. So, because I only had very little money coming in, or I didn't know where it was, or basically I had like $2 to rub in. It was just a mess. So working so hard and making pretty decent money for a 19-year-old, for someone that had zero experience, it was just gone. It was poof. Like it would hit the bank account on Friday, and like I said, on Monday it would be gone because my lovely husband at the time would either go to a strip club or go shopping or whatever. It would just be gone. And I'm like, okay, that's cool and all, but like, how am I supposed to eat? And I was just so like overwhelmed. Like I was trying to pay like our furniture bill because he like got everything on credit and like wouldn't tell me. He would say like, oh, hey, I went and bought us a furniture set for our new house. I'm like, oh, that sounds so cool. And I was like, oh, wait, you didn't pay for it? Like we have to pay for it. And so, trying to pay all those bills, he took my social security number and went to 33 different car dealerships to get a vehicle. So I had 33 inquiries on my credit report. My credit score by the time all that was over was 400. Yeah. So I couldn't do anything. In that point where you're like trying to build stuff or like trying to get a vehicle or things like that, like I had zero, it wasn't like no credit. It was credit that was in the dirt. So you can't do anything with that. So luckily I dug myself out of a hole. My mom co-signed with me on a vehicle to try to bring that up. I finally saved up enough money to get a secured credit card. at Wells Fargo because they said that was the quickest way to build up my credit. And, because that was just like, if I wanted to buy a house one day, like I wouldn't be able to, like things like that. Like I had to fix it. And then the most shameful time was when I was all by myself trying to resist moving back in with my parents. So I was on food stamps, which the process to even get that is like they comb through every inch of your life. And so you have to relive everything over and over and over again and explain why you're in the situation and like what you're going through and how you got there. And like you have to provide all these financial statements, all like every inch of your life to even be approved. And so even to get the health insurance, to get the food stamps, it was a process that was very embarrassing and painful. And then to actually use the food stamps or the Medicaid or whatever, you had to go to certain doctors. You have to go to the grocery store at 6 o'clock in the morning, like I said, so your residents at your apartment community that you work at don't see you. And then it got to the point where everyone was like, Jordan, how'd you lose all that baby weight? Because I gained 60 pounds, stress and pregnancy. I lost it because the only things that I could afford were baby formula, diapers, baby food, and a loaf of bread, Nutella. That's what I lived on, a loaf of bread and Nutella. And occasionally I would get some luncheon meat and put some like mustard on it. But that's what I lived off of for months. And like I couldn't go out to eat for lunch at lunchtime with my coworkers. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like literally one day my manager looked at me and she was like, do you have money to go out to lunch today with the team? And I looked at her and I had to say no. She was like, I'll get you today. And that was like so embarrassing to me, to come from a place where like I was super comfortable, didn't have a care in the world, to like literally like, how am I going to feed my daughter? Like I didn't care about me. I would survive on Diet Coke or something. But like literally, how am I supposed to feed this baby? How am I supposed to, put diapers on her butt? Like how? I didn't know. So it was so awful. And then one time my dad came down. He works in Pensacola often, so he'd drop in and see me. And he always looked through my pantry and my refrigerator, and he'd say like, Jordan, like, come on. I was like, Dad, I just don't have it. Like, this is what it is right now. Or I would say, make up stuff like, oh, well, I'm going to the grocery store tonight. Like, it's just because, like, it's the end of the week or whatever. And so he slipped $100 bill into my purse. And this was still when the husband was around. And I go to work, and he texts me, my dad does, and he's like, hey, I put some money in your purse. Don't tell anybody about it. Go get yourself some groceries. I was like, yes, sir. So I go right after work. I go pick up Avery from daycare. We go straight to the grocery store because I literally had no food. And I go and I get all the stuff that we need. I'm adding everything up to make sure it's like under $100 because I don't have a penny over that. And I get up there to pay, and the $100 is gone. Gone. Nowhere to be found. And I was just like, did I like drop it? Like, did I lose it? Like, because that's something I would do. And I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? So then I go home, and I had to leave all the food at the grocery store, embarrassed. I go to my apartment. The husband is there, and I was just like, and I didn't want to tell him in case I actually did lose it. And so I go inside, and I'm unloading Avery and my purse and like all that stuff. And I go back out to his vehicle to check something. And there's shopping bags in the back of the car. He had bought himself a new pair of Converse and an outfit from Express. Belt, shoes, shirt, everything. I've never been so infuriated in all my life. It takes a lot to make me mad. It takes a lot. And I took the shoes and I walked in and I threw them at his head. I was like, I was going to buy food. So when it gets to that level where it's just like really like just primary, like you need to buy food, Like, that's the point where you're like, how the heck did I get here? Like, what happened? It's not like, oh, I can't go get my nails done this week. It's like, oh my God, I literally don't know how I'm going to eat.
Yeah. Like, how am I going to get from point A to point B? How am I going to take care of my kids? How am I going to take care of myself? Like, very basic
survival,
not Converse and Express. Oh my goodness. Okay, so when did things start to shift for you? When you went to school and moved back home, or when did you decide to, shift the mindset from really from rock bottom to this abundance where you're at now?
So whenever I started going back to school and I started digging out of where I was, it started to help definitely, because I could see, I was like, okay, it sucks right now, but at least there's a light at the end of the tunnel. If I can get through this, I can get through anything. So I get through that, and about a year later, I had a boyfriend temporarily, and I broke up with him. And I just told my mom, I was like, Mom, I need to move back to Pensacola. Like, I have no friends. I don't have, like, I have to have things other than coming home and bathing my daughter and putting her to bed and waking up and driving to school every single day. Like, I need more. And at that point, I had landed some internships that were bringing in extra income that could pay for stuff. And I also decided to take out a student loan to pay for living expenses. And my mom was like, I hope you know what you're signing up for. Like, that's a lot of debt. And I was like, I don't care at this point. Like, everyone else has student loans, like, through the nose. So what's like 10 grand going to do? So I get a student loan for living expenses. I find a really cheap apartment. I move me and Avery back to Pensacola, and I finally start feeling like myself again, because I have time to, like, take her to the beach or meet friends for lunch or, something. Like, I'm finally feeling like a normal person again, not just a single mom who's going to school. And I start, like, really building relationships with my coworkers, and I started to feel better. And then as I inch closer and closer, I could finally find confidence in myself of, like, hey, like, that all sucked, but I do have the power within myself to provide for my family. And so I got really comfortable with that. And then, as soon as you start feeling comfortable and confident about yourself, then you meet somebody, because then you're not worried about meeting anybody. So then I met my husband, and he's so fantastic. And, a year later, we have a baby. And, I came from all that background of, like, not having any money to having a stable income. It wasn't much, but at least it was consistent, to very roller coaster. Like, you would get $5,000 here, then nothing. $5,000, then nothing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't live like this. So and my husband is very, not like, he's not over the top. He doesn't, like, spend a lot of money on frivolous things, but he does love him some organic food. And, like, spending $140 a month at Mako CrossFit, and, like, it's a CrossFit gym here, but, like, he would spend money on things like that. And I'm just like, I could have got some macaroni and cheese and would have been fine. So, so that was a mindset shift, and I was doing the budgets, and I was taking over the bills, and I was making sure everything was good. And I saw all the debt that we had to pay off, like his debt from credit cards and my debt from student loans and things. And I was like, babe, like, we're spending too much money. Like, we need to cut down. We need to, like, we need to, like, shrink our grocery bill. We need to, like, lower our expenses. Like, this is just too much. And he just looked at me and he was like, no, we need to make more money. I was like, well, there's a thought. Okay, because I was used to only having X amount coming in. And that's all I knew was, you go get a good job, you get like $50,000 or $60,000 a year, depending on if it's good or not. You get you some benefits, and then you're set. And that's what comes in the door, and that's the life that you live. So once that statement hit me, and I was like, whoa, so you're saying we can just go make more money, and I can, like, buy normal groceries and, like, have a car payment and we won't die? And he was like, yeah. So I was like, okay, well, how do we make more money? So, yeah. I was like, how do we make more money? Like, let's do it. Like, I'm sure you're telling me I can go get my nails done? Okay. So we figured it out, and we doubled our income, and we doubled it again. And like, now we can breathe. And I just feel like everybody needs to have that feeling.
So what was the biggest shift for you going from, you talk about the stable income to the roller coaster income. Do you guys have like that stability with that entrepreneur income now, or how do you guys balance the two?
So what we did was I trained him to think of a commission check not as a paycheck. So with closings in real estate or whatever service industry you're in that's like straight commission, you can't look at your commission checks like a paycheck because it's not. So we I was like, babe, you've got to start treating this like a business. This is a company. We have an LLC. We have QuickBooks. So we figured out we started treating what we were doing as a business, and we started processing payroll. So I figured out what our monthly expenses were and, added if I wanted to get my nails done or if he needed to go buy some new pants or something, or the kids have violin lessons or whatever. I added all those up and I was like, okay, we at least need this amount net in our payroll each month. So then we process that payroll every month, and that's what we live off of. And everything else is just sitting there waiting. So we just leave it. It's kind of like we just leave it in reserves, and if we need it, it's there. And if not, at least we have our payroll. And that's what we did too whenever we hired someone, was we made a commitment to ourselves to always have 3 months of their income in the bank at any given moment. So, we do that for ourselves, and we do that for our employees too.
Oh, and that's genius, because then you're not digging yourself a hole trying to figure out how you are going to pay yourself or pay your employees or things like that, and I know a lot of people or a lot of businesses even recommend 6 to 9 months worth, if you can get to that point, 6 to 9 months on reserve, where if all hell breaks loose or something happens in the market or whatever industry you're in, if it's what they call it is like a dry season, right? You're still able to provide for yourself, your family, your employees, your business, and keep things afloat without having to freak out and stress, like, how are we going to make things? How are we going to make this money? But no, and I love that mindset shift where you talked about we need to budget, we need to cut back. And then the other side of things where it's just like, well, why don't we make more money? You know, and it's so interesting because I was at a place where that too, I come from a corporate background, and the only time I ever thought that I would make more money is when I would get a raise,
Right.
Or when you get a promotion. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, your raises are anywhere from, I think the raises for the company that I worked at were like a 2 to 5% raise. And then if you met every single requirement, you may get a bonus, right? And it's like a whopping $2,000, and then they tax it as a gift, so you get literally 50% of the bonus. So it's like, what the hell? It's
but
not
you have
even
benefits.
Yes, but
you have a stable income. And you know what? That's okay for a lot of people, but it's not okay for me.
Nope. And I agree with you. And ever since making that change it's been 3 years since I've left that corporate environment. And it's crazy just to be like, oh, well, yeah, let's try and hit this amount of money this week, and coming up with a game plan and a marketing plan and all of those, ins and outs. But it's a total mindset shift. And once somebody helps you kind of open the door to that opportunity, you just start to think differently. Like your brain is just wired differently. So I love that. So tell me what it is that you do for women. Walk me through, I don't know, either like your podcast or one of your courses. Like what are the main things that you talk about? You talk about budget and how you can make more money. So let's touch on those.
Gotcha. Yeah. So my course is, it's called the Life for Me Jumpstart, and it covers health, wealth, relationships, and tools. So wealth is obviously the biggest part and the part that I'm most passionate about. The reason why I put health in there is because I have found that mindset and the way that you treat yourself really dictates how far you go in your business. So if you don't take care of your body, you're not going to go very far. So that's why I feel like it's a super important piece. Like, I'm not a dietitian. I'm like the furthest thing from that. But I do find that think that it's super important to pay attention to your body, to have that healthy mindset, to put good things into your body, and to take and move. And so I talk about like having healthy mindset, diet, exercise, like what's worked for me. Just think mindset about it. Like, growing up, I felt like, I had to count calories, and working out was a chore. So really transitioning that into like, just put good things into my body so I feel good, so I can show up for my team, for my husband, for my kids. Like, so that's why it's in there, is because it's super important. And then wealth is budgeting for the life that you want and not the life that you have. I feel like that's super, super important, because like we talked about earlier, like if you think you're going to make 50,000, you're going to make 50,000. If you want to make 100, you're going to go make 100. So I have this process of where I write down like everything that I want in the month. Like, I want to get my nails done. I want to go get my hair done, or blowouts or whatever. I want to get my eyelashes done. I want to get meal prep service for the month or whatever. So I'll write all those things down, including like Avery's violin lessons, Avery's ballet, daycare, all the things. And so I put everything on there as if they've already happened. Like, this is my life. I get my nails done. I get massages, whatever that looks like for you. It may look totally different. It may look like going to buy strictly organic food for your family, which is very expensive. But write down that life that you want and figure out how to get there. So if you budget that in, you're going to say like, oh, okay, this is my life, so I need to make at least enough money to take care of these things. And you trick your brain into going and getting that. So that's budgeting. Debt is, so we had tons of debt, like $50,000 of credit card debt. And a lot of that was my husband's. And I was so overwhelmed because there was like 10 different credit cards. I didn't know like where to start or what to do. So I created a spreadsheet, because I'm a numbers person. I'm a geek about that. So I made a spreadsheet, and I figured out a way to have everything paid off at the same time. And because I looked at that debt snowball thing, and I was like, that doesn't work for me, because I don't know when things are going to be paid off. So I was like, I want everything done this year. Like, I want to be done. So I just plugged everything in, and I said, okay, we're going to set aside $5,000 every single month to pay towards our credit card debt. And we got it paid off in 8 months. And I just feel like that's such a powerful tool to be able to plug in a number that you're comfortable with of spending towards your debt each month. Say it's $100. Say it's $2,000. Say you have 10 grand because you're crazy. Whatever that number is, to be able to plug that in and to say, okay, if I make an effort to put this amount of money towards my debt, this is when it's all going to be done. So that's a super powerful tool. Then the relationships that I talk about is, oh my gosh. The light went out.
It's okay. I can still hear you.
Okay. It like just went out on me. But anyways, so then relationships is I found that whenever you are in pursuit of these massive goals, that things start to fall through the cracks, like your marriage, your parents, your friends, your kids are bugging the crap out of you. Like, oh, hey, Mom, we're these little tiny humans that you need to take care of. And so I felt like it was super important to put that in there, because you have to remember why you're doing all of this. Like, I'm super passionate about helping women, but the reason why I'm doing it is because I need to provide for my family. So they go hand in hand, and I can't lose sight of the people that I'm doing it for. And then the last piece is tools. So Facebook, Instagram, email lists. Like, I'm no expert, but I can definitely teach you a lot of stuff that I've learned that I've put into practice and what works and what doesn't work. And I'm just trying to help that person that's right behind me. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to claim that I'm an expert in any area. I'm just trying to help that person that's one step behind me.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And you just kind of own that. And that goes back to the confidence factor, you know?
Yeah.
So tell us, before we start wrapping this up, tell us what confidence means to you.
To me, confidence means to look yourself in the mirror every day and to know that you're worth it. You're worth every ounce of love, every ounce of praise, and what God put you on this earth for is worth whatever you're going through right now.
That's beautiful. I love that. And that really hits home for me because a lot of times before I got to where I am today, I did not feel worthy of anything that I had in my life. Like anytime something came to me, I thought, oh, this is too good to be true, or this isn't for me, or whatever that is. And so it's a mindset shift, but I love that worthiness comes from within. And when you start to feel worthy in yourself, good things start to come your way.
Yes. Agreed.
Awesome. So how can people get a hold of you? I know you talked about your podcast, so give us that information. And then if they're interested in your course and following you on social media, where can we find you?
Okay, so my podcast is called The Life for Me Podcast. You can either find it through searching that or just typing in my name, Jordan English. And I'm on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you get your podcast. And I am on Instagram. My handle is MRS Jordan English, and you can find me on Facebook as well. And my course, all you have to do is click the link in my bio on my Instagram to find out more information.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I was really excited and hearing so much about your story. I am seriously mind blown. I would have never, ever in a million years guessed that you would have went through so many hardships in your life and come out on the other side then. And right, I mean, me as an outsider, you just look like, oh, it's no big deal. But I'm sure at the time, it was, I can't imagine. I can't imagine a lot of things that you had to do. So thank you for being so open and honest and real with us, because I'm sure you inspired a whole hell of a lot of people today with your story. So thank you.
I sure hope so. Yeah, that's the thing that gets me through every day is that God gave me this story to use it and to help other women get through harder things than that.
Thank you for listening to the Confidence Coach podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I want to invite you to leave a 5-star review and share what you loved most about this episode. You can also screenshot and share it on social media. Tag me at sasha.davis. And if you're looking for additional resources, head on over to sashadavis.com. Check out ways that you can work with me and all the free resources that are available to you. Have a kick-ass day.